We're live again with a new episode of a newly rebranded podcast, because that's what we're doing now. This was originally group coaching, but I think the time slot is just difficult for people to attend live for whatever reason. So I've decided to convert the format into a podcast. I've been noodling around the idea of rebooting the old Profit from Legal podcast for a while anyway. And I've got some really exciting announcements to share. So first and foremost is my book, Lead Again, is doing pretty well. Sold over 1,300 copies, something like 1,360 copies. Today is March 7th, and the publication date was February 29th. So I'm pretty pleased with how it's performing. Also, initial feedback on the book has been very positive, just overwhelmingly positive. So it's nice to have that. Also, kind of a huge life change for me. I am announcing here for the first time that I am now a partner with Industria Business Lawyers. And my partners, Alexander and Aaron, have been so kind in speaking to me and negotiating carefully with me our new partnership. So I'm really excited to be taking everything that I've done with Profit from Legal at Counsel and Clarity at my firm and bringing that over to Industria Business Lawyers. And part of that is going to be this podcast, which I have decided to call the Strategic CLO. And the subtitle of it is Navigating Growth and Legal Resilience. So I do want to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it means to lead with legal acumen in today's fast-paced business world. I do want to talk about, steering growth stage companies towards sustainable success, long-term success, and really build on my experience as a legal strategist and a leadership coach and share valuable insights, helpful insights on preemptive legal risk management, strategic decision-making, building resilient leadership teams. So this episode is just kind of a quick, hey, how you doing orientation to what's going to be coming down the pike pretty quick. And I want to talk about a little bit about what Profit from Legal is, what role it's going to play, what my role is at Industria Business Lawyers, and what Profit from Legal is going to, what role that's going to play in both this podcast and in the future of legal support for growth stage companies. And I think it's a good time to just tell a story. I think people like to listen to a story. So I'm not going to make it a long story. I'm going to try not to make it a long story. But I do want to tell you a story. So when I got started practicing law, this was 2012, I hung my shingle and I just kind of took whatever came in the door. And I really, really hated it. I thought, man, I've made a huge mistake going to law school, taking out all this student loan debt, going out on my own. What have I done? Because I was just miserable and I was taking, whatever came in the door. But I noticed a pattern. And the pattern was that there were a lot of, smaller businesses that had easily preventable lawsuits that they were facing. They were spending, thousands of dollars on litigation to go to court to resolve these disputes or problems. And I would ask them, why didn't you hire a lawyer in the first place? And I mean, bless their hearts, they just didn't know any better. The answer was, well, we didn't know that it would be expensive, or we really trusted each other. We really trusted the other party. We've been friends since whenever, or we have this particular relationship or whatever. There was, a lot of trust in the beginning of a relationship, and they didn't feel like hiring a lawyer to advise them of their legal rights, to write a contract and all of that was necessary. They thought it would be expensive, that it would complicate the deal, that it would make things harder somehow. If you involve a lawyer, somehow everything gets harder and more expensive. That's the feeling. And so they just didn't. They just said, well, we'll muddle through, and if something bad happens, then we'll hire a lawyer after the fact. And I saw that pattern over and over and over. And I started asking, well, you're spending thousands of dollars on litigation. Would you spend a couple $100s on a contract if you believed the contract would prevent this from happening, or on hiring a lawyer to write your contract instead of you trying to do it yourself, or on just wouldn't it have been useful to hire a lawyer to just get some consulting on this at a few $100, instead of spending thousands of dollars of your hard-earned money on litigation services? They said, well, yeah, of course, of course that's cheaper, of course the dollar amount's less, but we couldn't have known that in advance. Okay. Really big companies know in advance that you need a lawyer before you have a crisis, before something's on fire, right? Like they have legal departments. GE, Ford, IBM, Amazon, you know, all the big guys, Procter and Gamble, Archer Daniels, right? Like they're all these really big companies. They all have legal departments. And why do you think that is? Do you think they just like to flash their cash? They just like to throw money around or burn it? They're just going to waste it on useless stuff? No. They understand that law touches every single aspect of their business. They don't hire lawyers just to flex on people. That's not what it's about. They hire lawyers because they understand that the law touches every single part of their business. There's not a single aspect of business operations on which the law is silent. And they know that it's more expensive to fail to comply with regulations. It's more expensive to get sued. It's more expensive to have a dispute. It's more expensive to have a problem than to prevent that problem. And so they have legal departments and they have lawyers to advise them in advance to navigate the complexity of the legal landscape, to navigate the nuance and the shades of gray, um, that govern all of their obligations to comply with various regulations. They know that it's more expensive to wait to get fined by the government, to get sued by somebody. It's more expensive to do those things in the long run. Small businesses do have a disadvantage compared to big businesses. It's hard to think about paying the cost of a chief legal officer salary for most small businesses. And that's because, most small businesses have less than $25 million in revenue. Um, that number is flexible, especially with inflation the last couple of years. So the number is going up. Um, a growth stage company might have, 15 to $100 million in revenue, something like that. And depending on the industry and various other factors, it could be, more or less. So, you know, even for a company like that, spending, on the lower end of that range, at least, if you've got $15 million in revenue, spending between $275,000 and $425,000 on salary alone for a chief legal officer is kind of it's not an insignificant line item in your budget. It's something that you look at and you go, could we have a lower cost solution? Like, do we really need this guy at this price, or gal? Do we really need this person, this professional at this price performing this services? And what kinds of ROI are we getting out of this CLO? Like, what are they saving us from? And what are they building in terms of assets in the business that's going to justify this salary? When you scale down from the lower end of a growth stage company into like a small business, like 0 to 10 million or 0 to 15 million in revenue, looking at that number and doing the calculus, it's just hard. Like your average or sort of median number on that salary range is $350,000. And a lot of small business owners, they're like, well, the whole business doesn't make $350,000. There's no way we could afford to hire a chief legal officer at $350,000. And the chief legal officer is like the first hire for the legal department. I mean, he runs the legal department. Everybody else in the legal department reports to him. So if you can't afford him, how are you going to afford everybody else? Right? At a minimum, your legal department is one lawyer doing his best. That's the minimum. So You need a lawyer to represent the business, and like, should the business be sued, a lawyer has to go to court and show up for them, et cetera. The business can't represent itself. The non-lawyer owners of the business can't represent a company, an LLC, or a corporation. So, what are you going to do? You need at least one man or woman in the legal department. So, if you can't afford a $350,000 salary, what do you do? Well, a lot of people, what they do if they are responsible enough to acknowledge that they need to have the lawyer first, a lot of times they'll go one of three ways. They will hire a lawyer on a as needed basis and pay flat fees or hourly fees. They'll pay the retainer. They'll put them on a retainer and accept an hourly fee model, or they'll kind of maintain a relationship with a lawyer and pay him, flat fees for projects now and then. It's kind of bursty. Um, but they don't necessarily put him on retainer. They just ask for a flat fee for a project here, a project there. And both of these methods are, fine. You get what you pay for. You're buying the lawyer's time and his legal skill and his acumen, right? But you're doing it, and this is what's problematic. You're doing it when you think you need it. And respectfully, like, with all the respect in the world, the worst thing, like, legal clients are bad at a lot of things. This is why they become legal clients, because the lawyer is good at the things that they're not good at, right? But legal clients are bad at a lot of things. And one of the things that they're worst about is assessing when they have a need for legal support. Usually, by the time they detect that they have a need for legal support, they've had the need for a while. The risk has become, a problem, and the problem has metastasized into a crisis. So by the time you think you had a problem, you've had a problem for a while. And now it's time to really do something about it. And the best time to do something about it may have already passed. So what do you do when nobody wants to put a lawyer on retainer? You spend $5,000-$10,000 on a retainer. The lawyer's billing at, $400, $500, $600, maybe $700 an hour. I've seen lawyers whose hourly rates are higher than that, if you can believe it. And you're going to feel like you're in a cab with the meter running all the time, right? And so you're not going to call the lawyer, because every time you call that lawyer, even if it's, a $400 an hour lawyer, you're talking about a 6-minute phone call being $40, $80 for 12 minutes with your lawyer. How does that sound? And most people are like, well, yeah, I am gonna wait till my hair's on fire to call you, because that's expensive. And then the per project flat fee guy, you have to negotiate the fee every time, and it's kind of a lot, right? It kind of feels a little more high maintenance. So you're really going to do it when you really feel like it's a big deal. Like, we're going to purchase this other small business. We're going to do an asset purchase and sale. We're going to buy them out. And so, yeah, we definitely need a lawyer to support that transaction. And then that lawyer is probably charging something like a percentage of the total purchase price as like legal closing costs, as it were, kind of analogous to the way you pay closing costs on a house. So, someone sells a business for $3.5 million, that lawyer might be charging 1.5%, which would be reasonable, be kind of cheap, actually. So you're spending $52,500, and the client may be thinking, well, we didn't budget for an extra $52,500 for legal fees. You kind of get sticker shock whenever you do the flat fee thing sometimes, because you're not really prepared. You don't really know. You're not like pricing it out while you're thinking about whatever you're doing. You're not thinking about like legal closing costs when you're thinking about buying a business. Most people don't. Even when you buy a house, most people don't think about the closing costs on the house. They don't really think about, they look at the sticker price for the house. They don't really think about the realtor's fees and closing costs until they're pretty well into the process of buying the house. And at that point, it's just like, oh, really? Can we stick the other side with these closing costs? Because yuck, I have to pay you 3%, and the other real estate agent's getting 3%. And you think about 3% of the whole value of my house. Are you, did your work really warrant that? Like, that seems like an awful lot. 3% of the whole purchase price. That, I don't know, for a realtor, that feels like a lot. But then, the realtor explains why they charge 3%, the value that they believe they add to the transaction, and so on and so forth. And, at the end of the day, it comes down to, well, do you want to do this way or don't you? Do you want to have a realtor or don't you? Because if you're not going to pay me my 3%, I'm not going to do anything for you. And then most people are like, well, I don't want to do it by myself. So they hire the realtor. And it's very similar with a lawyer in a purchase and sale transaction for a business, when you're charging closing costs, or you're charging a percentage of the purchase price for legal fees, as a form of kind of closing costs for that. It's similar. You end up in that same feeling, that same, oh, did you really add a lot of value? It's a lot of the same questions. So, lawyers get asked a lot of the same questions that realtors get asked, but just in a slightly different context. Instead of buying a house, you're buying a business, or selling a house, you're selling a business, etc. And the flat fee model can be like that. It can be great because you don't have the billable hour. It's like, well, we know what the value of this service is, and so you are just going to pay this fee because that's what the work is worth. But it can also lead to sticker shock and clients going, well, can we break that up into several invoices? Are you going to finance that for us? How are we going to be able to do this? Because we didn't plan for this extra cost. We planned for $3.5 million for the purchase price of this business, not 3.5, $3,552,500 for the purchase of this business. So it's really not a whole lot extra, but an extra 1.5%. If your margins are super, super tight, might be difficult for people to agree to pay. So what do you do? What do you do if you don't want the traditional retainer and hourly, feel like you're in a cab with the meter running legal support that you only call when you think you need it, and so by the time you call, it's too late? What do you do if you don't want to always feel like you're getting nickeled and dimed every single time with flat fees and all of that? What do? You do what big companies do. You put the lawyer on your team all the time, beginning to end, and you understand that legal support is part of the cost of doing business, and you budget for it. That's only possible with two options. One, actually make the lawyer an employee in your business. That's called a chief legal officer, or an associate attorney, or whatever their role is, whatever their title is in your business. You hire them as a W-2 employee, or an executive or whatever, right? You make them an actual employee of the business is the point. The other option is fractional chief legal officer. This is where the chief legal officer is a part-time employee in your business. They're no longer, they're not just the lawyer for your business. They're the lawyer for your business and several other businesses that are also hiring them to be their part-time chief legal officer. The magic of this, what's wonderful about this, is it's a flat monthly fee, just like you would have a fixed cost for that employee on your payroll. That employee is going to cost you the same amount of money month after month, year after year, with raises and whatnot, but more or less adjusted for inflation, more or less the same fixed cost for that one employee. Your average FTE cost, your average full-time equivalent employee cost is going to be, more or less the same, adjusted for inflation year after year, for a certain role. Like you establish that, you lock it in. Yes, there's variance and variables and bonuses and different things. And so it's not always the exact same cost, but it's predictable. And that's what matters. It's predictable. And because it's predictable, you can budget for it. And this is why fractional CLO services are so powerful for businesses of all sizes, small businesses, growth stage companies, especially growth stage companies, because they're kind of in between, like, well, we've never really had a lawyer on our team, and we can't really afford $350,000 a year for a full-time CLO. So we need that level of support, but we need it at a lower cost. And the ability for a lawyer to do the work to do the preventive law work of preventing your risks from becoming problems and blowing up into crises is unlocked. Like the power of them being able to do that work is unlocked when you can make them a regular part of your leadership team. And you're only going to do that if a couple of things happen. First, the cost is predictable and you can budget for it. And if it's in your budget, then you're passing that cost along with all the other costs of you doing business to consumers in the form of prices for goods and services. So you need a flat monthly fee, basically a subscription fee, right? You need a flat monthly fee for your part-time chief legal officer. And then the part-time chief legal officer needs to be responsible to provide certain things on an unlimited basis to your business. That means no billable hour. They're delivering for you, unlimited remote legal consultation. Now, this does need to be a remote position because remember, they're doing this for a number of companies. The lawyer is over here like juggling all the different clients that they have. And they may have 10 or 11 different companies that they support with this fractional chief legal officer service. And, each of those clients might be paying something like $28,000 or $30,000 per quarter. So they're effectively paying, let's just call it $10,000 a month, something like that, right? But because there's no hourly billing, that's not going to blow out the budget. You're effectively paying, so somewhere probably between, and I'm just spitballing. I know, 10,000 a month times 12 is $120,000, but I think really the actual cost is probably somewhere more like maybe 115, 116, something like that would be a very reasonable annual line item for a fractional CLO. In other words, I think a part-time chief legal officer should cost a business about a third of what the average chief legal officer would cost. And this makes it affordable because you're cutting the price down. You're saving every client about 66%. So that's, properly priced, properly modeled with all the unlimited services that the CLO will deliver. But it's not just about, unlimited remote legal consultation support. It's also about legal operations, creating a solid, that CLO's responsibility is to create a legal strategy that's solid for that business. Really good strategy that the business can follow, that's going to govern how the business responds to the way the law touches every part of their business. Because the law is going to touch every part of your business and you need to touch back. You don't just want to have all those tentacles all over you, those government regulation tentacles all over you, just wrapping you up and sucking on you. It's like, ugh, okay. So we want to keep some boundaries here so that we don't feel completely suffocated and we don't feel unable to move and breathe. So, you need to be able to have a plan for how you're going to address each one of those touch points on your business, and then you need to do it. You need to execute on the strategy, and that's the chief legal officer's, the fractional CLO's job. And he governs, the legal department, and he works with the chief financial officer to align legal support with business goals. He works with the chief operations officer to make sure that systems and processes are designed and executed, that workflows include legal in a way that makes sense for the business. He works with the CEO to guide the overall vision and strategy for how big of a risk should we take here? Maybe should we hedge a little bit over there? If you're going to strategically take this step, what are the next 3 steps that are going to happen as a consequence? He works with every member of the leadership team in order to make sure that whatever they're doing it with legal in mind. They're doing it mindfully, thoughtfully, carefully. It does have the effect a little bit of slowing things down. Not a lot, not to the point where you can't get anything done, but to the extent that slow becomes smooth, and smooth in the long term is fast. because you end up with less, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Instead, you take 2 slightly slower steps forward and no steps back because you did it carefully and thoughtfully and you avoid the setbacks. You don't have to always be struggling to go from setback to comeback. You can avoid the setbacks in the first place, but only with the right strategy, only with the right person on your team guiding that strategy. So you need the fractional CLO. You need them to help you manage the legal dimension of your business because, you're not going to be well equipped to do that yourself. And it doesn't matter how smart you are or how many degrees you have or whatever. There's something very particular about the way legal training and experience in the legal domain shapes your mind, shapes your brain, the way that you think, the way the way you talk. You almost can't turn it off. It's one of the challenges of being a lawyer is it's hard to stop thinking like a lawyer in other contexts of your life. So it becomes a significant part of who you are and the way that you are. And that can be extremely advantageous to a business. So I want to talk more in this podcast about these things, about the way that CLOs, fractional chief legal officers, can really be a huge benefit to businesses. I want to talk about the strategies for how to work with the CLO, how to get the most out of them, and how to take a growth stage company from where it is to where it wants to go safely, sustainably. And I think when you add, I've seen in my practice that when you add the fractional chief legal officer to your business becomes more valuable because the CLO is building with your team and sometimes on their own. They're building real assets that make the business more valuable. Like when you do a valuation on the business, it's worth more money. They make the business more efficient because you're being careful. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You've got higher efficiency, better workflows, better processes, and more solid questions asked, smart questions asked about the way things get done. So you're more efficient and you're more effective, right? You have stronger, more resilient leadership. You've got one more person, one more perspective, usually a very clever one, looking at the way things are being done and saying, well, what if we did it this way? Or have you considered what will happen when you do this? What will happen with that? And because that person is a trusted advisor in your business and you know that they're looking out for your best interests and that their feedback is constructive, you can listen to it, you can hear it, you know that it's safe, that it's good for you. This is a highly qualified professional, very intelligent, very experienced, looking out for you. Wouldn't it feel so much safer to have that person on your team, right? Your business is going to be more valuable, it's going to be more efficient, it's going to be more effective and stable over the long haul. But what might surprise you the most is that it makes your business more profitable. It's going to make your business more profitable. You're going to get return on your investment. What I have seen from our service, and I'll just give you a couple of quick little case studies. I've seen transactions that were supported by a transactional attorney, like a merger and acquisition transactions, where the fee was under $38,000 and the attorney saved $1.5 million in that transaction. I've seen an attorney get involved in a business that had stagnated for 2 years and within 2 months turn it around, remove executives from the company that were holding the company back, and free up resources and reclaim resources, and then attract new investment into the business. There are powerful things that can happen when you inject a lawyer into the mix. And if you really want to play with the big boys, just realize that all the big companies, they all have legal departments. You want to compete with them? You think you can do that without one? You think you can do that without a lawyer? Good luck. It's going to be impossible. You absolutely have to have not just the contracts, not just the documents. I mean, lawyers are not just document monkeys, right? You need the strategy. you need to unlock the legal strategy to get from where you are to where you want to go. You need a fractional chief legal officer if you know that you need the lawyer, but you're struggling to figure out how it's going to fit in your budget. The fractional chief legal officer is a wonderful bridge for growth stage companies from having like maybe a sometimes lawyer or no lawyer at all and not quite being able to afford a full-time CLO. You need someone in between. So if you're in that 15 million to $100 million in revenue, or 15 to 20 people on your team to 100 people on your team, you're kind of in that size range. It's probably time for you to talk to a fractional CLO. And here's the thing too: if you're overspending on legal, and that's possible, maybe it's time to consider whether or not you really need the size of legal department you have. Maybe legal is a pain point for your budget, and maybe you could be cutting your cost by 2/3. Maybe you hired the CLO and now you're kind of regretting it and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's such a drain. He doesn't really do anything. And, we're going to have to replace him anyway. If you're going to have to replace your CLO, your general counsel anyway, because they're not getting you the results that you need, and maybe it's time to think about, well, do we replace him with another person like him at that same pay grade? Do we put another full-time employee in here as the general counsel or the CLO, or do we consider a fractional CLO, a firm that provides fractional chief legal officer services and can not just deliver on the fractional CLO themselves, but other managed attorneys? And even if you spent a third of your current lawyer's compensation on the fractional CLO, that leaves an extra 2/3 that you could spend on contract attorneys and other paralegals and other legal support personnel, right? That could be managed by the fractional CLO, providing a whole team, whereas before you were hiring only one person. And human brains are usually better together. Teamwork and collaboration usually produces a better result. So are you going to get a better result, when you talk about bang for your buck, and if you're spending $350,000 a year on legal support for your business, you're going to get a better bang for your buck hiring one general counsel or one fractional chief legal officer or a whole team. So I'm a couple minutes over what I planned for this episode, but I just want to show you, like, there is powerful strategy that I have been developing and that I'm really pleased to be offering through IBL, Industrial Business Lawyers, now as a partner there. There's really, really powerful strategy in this stuff. It really does move the needle for companies. Like, I can't tell you, like, some of the ROI it's not typical. I don't want to say these results are typical, and I'm certainly not promising that you're going to get this, but I have seen ROI over 7,300%. Just like it's nuts, right? Because a lot of these companies, they're just in that place where they're taking smart risks, they're growing, they're dynamic, they're doing exciting things. It's not like the same stagnant churn, week after week, month after month, year after year. They're really on a mission and doing stuff. Companies like that are really exciting to support, but they have a lot of risks. They have a lot of challenges. Some of them don't make it, 10 years. So partnering with a lawyer that has over a decade, a dozen years of experience in doing this sort of thing, and who has really focused on just this one aspect of practice for over a decade, I think is important. Like, getting that level of experience, getting that level of skill to get you where you want to go to the next level in your business, I think is an amazing thing. It's a great opportunity. And you don't have to just accept the status quo. You don't have to accept that, retainer and billable hour model that makes you feel like you're in a cab with the meter running. You don't have to feel like you're being nickeled and dimed every time you turn around. You can just have a simple, easy, flat monthly fee that you can budget for, that's far lower than the apples to apples comparison in terms of hiring an employee. You're going to save a ton of money and build a lot of value in your business. It's a great opportunity. I can't wait to talk more about that here in this channel. If it's exciting to you, if you're very curious, I hope you'll stay tuned in and keep listening, because we're going to talk a whole lot about preemptive legal risk management, strategic decision making, building resilient leadership teams with legal support, and all of that stuff. It's going to be great. I am a resilient leadership coach as well. I've written a book called Lead Again. I mentioned that at the beginning of this episode, and it's doing well. So I do like to also weave in leadership themes and resilience themes. And so I have a plan to do some of that as well, but it's going to focus more heavily on the legal side. So I hope you'll tune in to the next episode of the Strategic CLO. My goal is to do one of these every week, on probably on Thursday mornings. So I hope you'll tune in, and thank you for watching and listening. Have a great day.